Good evening there, everybody. How's everybody doing out there tonight? Hope your hope your evening's been very well. My Atlanta Braves just swept the Mets. Um, Now we're one game away from winning the NL East from a fifth straight year, so that's good. Um, this week is going to be another video of me talking about the evolution of women's wrestling. Um, So I made a video about this back in May of this year of me talking about the evolution of women's wrestling. Um, I spoke about not only the evolution, but I spoke about the growth, and I talked very briefly about where women's wrestling is today. By the way, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Please like and share and comment. The live chat is open. Um, I spoke about this back in May of this year, and I just gave my thoughts on where women's wrestling is today and where it was back in the 90s in the good old days. And I was very brief in talking about, the wrestlers of today against the wrestlers of the past. And you know, that's what I'm going to speak about again here today, but this time is more in a different line. And with that being said, I'm going to go on and get started. The evolution of women's wrestling. Have my notes right here. The evolution of women's wrestling. Women's wrestling has come a long way since the 1950s, from the fabulous Moolah to Mae Young, June Byers, Sherri Martel, Wendi Richter, Leilani Kai, or Leilani Kai, and Madusa, just to name a few. I did a video back in May of this year talking about how women's wrestling has evolved and its growth. Charlotte Flair, Sasha, Bayley, Becky, and Brit Baker wouldn't be here if not for its growth. This week on Wrestling Quick Takes, I will be talking about the evolution of women's wrestling, its growth, popularity, iconic moments, and women's wrestling today. So let's do it. Not just want to clear something up here. I said iconic moments. Won't be talking about that, but the growth of women's wrestling. The growth of women's wrestling is way beyond WWE, AEW, and TNA, just to name a few promotions. In a story from 2017 written by Jay Riddick of the Orlando Sentinel, he talks about the growth of women's wrestling being more than WWE. According to the OrlandoSentinel.com, the renaissance of women's wrestling was exemplified by WWE's Mae Young Classic. Mae Young Classic has had a trickle down effect on the entire sport. Other smaller promotions featuring high profile women's matches. As a result, more females are becoming sought after worldwide stars and growing that side of the business exponentially. Ring of Honor is on the leading edge of that growth. The Pennsylvania based company introduced a Woman of Honor division in 2015 after a YouTube clip of a match between Mindy Leon and Deonna Purrazzo went viral in wrestling circles. Both Both Ling, both Leon and Perazzo now play key roles in an ever-growing sector of Ring of Honor programming. Leon said the talent influx in WWE in Orlando based NXT in 2012 and 2013 inspired her to push for a bigger role in Ring of Honor, where she had just begun to train. That WWE Revolution let women show that they can do, said, hold on. That WWE Revolution let women show what they can do, said Leon, 25 years old. We were tired of just 2 minute on TV, of just 2 minute on TV. I have been pushing to do more in Ring of Honor forever, and finally, we sort of had a revolution of our own. Leon met Perazzo when both were working as extras on WWE television. They wrestled each other on an independent show and found they had good chemistry in the ring. So Leon began pitching the match to other promotions, in some cases breaking the company's gender barrier, and soon brought it to Ring of Honor. It was supposed to be a dark, unrecorded match, Leon said, of the Ring of Honor debut in Baltimore. There was another match that night that didn't work out, so they taped our match and threw it on YouTube. Overnight, it grew into the big sensation. We are we were very green, but it was still a great match, and it gave Ring of Honor a hint of what a women's division could be made of. Soon they launched Women of Honor and created a brand. Leon has garnered plenty of attention in the United States, but she's currently touring Japan as part of the annual five-star Grand Prix tournament. She has a special affinity for Japanese women's wrestling, going all the way back to watching 1980s tapes, but the travel itself is another big draw. I'm hoping to take a few days after the tournament and see the country, Leon said. I'm a huge Gypsy, and I recently had an epiphany that I can travel to all these beautiful places and need to soak up the life there. Perazzo had been waiting for her moment for her big break since childhood. She said her first wrestling memory was at age 9, sitting with her twin brother watching Stone Cold Steve Austin hit someone with a chair on TV. I was awestruck. I had to know everything about it, said Perazzo, 23 years old. My brother was my downfall. I asked for a Bowflex fitness trainer for Christmas just because I saw ads on TV and thought that was what wrestlers use. Everything I did was leading up to prepare for when I became a wrestler. When I when she turned 18, she started training at a school near her New Jersey home, drawing on her gymnastics and cheerleading background, plus her steady, her steady, her study of a variety of styles. Soon she was getting bookings not just in the Northeast, but across the country and eventually in Puerto Rico. In Japan, Perazzo wasn't part of the Mae Young Classic bracket, but she wrestled a tag team match on the second night of tapings at Full Sail University and spent much of the week training at the WWE Performance Center in East Orlando. Everyone involved knew how special those shows were. Perazzo, it was it was a sisterhood. They had a common goal to knock it out of the park, and they helped women's wrestling grow up. So it's amazing that, your dreams could come true by just simply watching TV and just idolizing some of the greats. I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, I mean, Mankind, just to name a few. And, just like me growing up, I was a huge basketball fan growing up. And over time, I not only branched out of being a basketball fan, but I was also I became a huge football fan just by watching it. But and baseball and soccer. So I mean, and that was my goal growing up. I wanted to be a basketball player, and it just never worked out. But for Perazzo, though, it was a different story. It worked out, and look at where she is now. This is the part that irks me. It really, really irks me of this video. The disrespect towards women's wrestling in mainstream. This is a part of this is a part this is part of women's wrestling that always bothered me over the last several years. The disrespect towards the women in the mainstream. In an article from Bleacher Report from 2009, it talks about the disrespect towards women's wrestling in the mainstream. According to BleacherReport.com, to put it bluntly, the women's division in the two mainstream American wrestling companies are slowly losing any form of respect they had. Don't believe me? Well, here's some quotes off of Yahoo Answers, Bleacher Report, and other sites. All the divas are just worthless. Eye candy. TNA knockouts aren't trained by TNA, they are recruited. Both companies should just scrap their women's divisions. The women's title is worthless. The women's matches are a waste of time. My thoughts on mainstream wrestling as of right now, well, to put it in my honest opinion, it is currently, please pardon my language. I'm not going to repeat what he just said. A beaten down, slap, beaten down mess. Was a lot of explicit words there. It is nowhere near what it was it was nowhere near what it was as a few as 5 years ago. Who is at fault for this? Well, the blame can be accredited to two things: the companies themselves and the fans. Let's start with what the fans credit to the problem. Number one, lack of care. Most wrestling fans don't care about women's wrestling. They view it as something that is boring or just a waste of time. We don't care for the rivalries because often we find them far too lackluster or repetitive. Wow. I just fucking wow. Two, not looking at the complete package. Many fans believe the divas or knockouts, whichever you prefer, as eye candy. Well, let me lay out a fact. We call them eye candy and perceive them as such because that's all we we want to see. Far too often, a wrestling fan will look at a diva for her looks and not her wrestling skills. We as fans choose to look at a diva for what we believe to be her negatives instead of looking at what is positive about her. Number three, clinging to the past. Many iconic many fans yearn for the divas of old. Trish and Lita, don't get me wrong. I love Trish and Lita and respect their talent and what they did for the divas division and women's wrestling as a whole, as much as anyone else. But as much as we want them to come back, they are retired and they will probably stay. So, except for sporadic appearances, we need to stop clinging to divas of the past and look towards the future. of the division, divas like Natalia or Kelly, who is probably one of the most underrated WWE divas. Well, now that I got that off my chest, let's move on to who everyone likes to blame, the companies. Number one, disrespect of the women's skills. It is well noted that good old Vince McMahon appears to hire divas for their looks without actually taking into account their wrestling skills or talents. Kelly, as talented as she is a great example of this. She worked for a modeling agency, and WWE contacted her and asked her to come train at OVW. She had no previous wrestling ability, yet WWE gave her a contract. However, Christy Hemme, who has a tremendous amount of talent, was released as a budget cut. Ever seen some of Jillian's old OVW matches? She is an awesome wrestler, yet she is reduced to a jobber. Cherry was rising as a wrestler, yet released because she was fat. What? As far as I recall, Cherry didn't look that fat. If Cherry was too fat, why didn't they release Bertha Faye back in the 90s? Number two, not enough, not enough ring time. The women are also given a very small time slate for their matches. The longest match I've seen in WWE in recent times was roughly 10 minutes. It was a five diva tag match, and guess what? Only four of the divas total got any in ring time. It's downright wrong. Some of the divas at some of the divas deserve longer matches, especially Jillian, Natalia, and Beth. Non-developed characters. Many of the divas have the same gimmick, random blonde, insert number here. And the majority of the divas that do have a gimmick aren't given the time to develop the character or the gimmick. Sucks. Jillian Hall, bad singer equals ratings. Take Michelle McCool's heel turn, a random attack on three divas, one good interview segment and nothing. They didn't even take the time to build her to be a good heel diva, even though she is one of the most talented divas on the roster and they already had a good thing running. She could have easily been the next Trish if they had taken the time to develop her heel character. Four, dumb, repetitive storylines. I would like someone to explain to me how a man dressed in drag is at any other time, yet it's apparently good when we are watching it on Raw. It's stupid. It poisoned the entire airtime of the 25 Diva Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal. That match should have been used to elevate a current diva or add to the career of a long-standing alumni who helped the business. Instead, it was won by a man with a terrible fake Italian accent. And if that isn't bad enough, they have kept their story going, taking up all of the time for the divas on Raw. I've covered the dumb, now the repetitive. Allow me to sum up just about every storyline for the women's title in the year or so. I want the title fans don't want to be see that. Not only is it not really a good idea story, it's been done over and over again between the same people. I think this story should should be scrapped, and the writer who thinks it is a good idea to use it over and over should be fired. How it all ties together? It's actually rather simple because the company proposes the same story, the same look for all the divas, and the lack of wrestling in their matches. Fans see the divas as boring and eye candy because fans see the divas as eye candy. That is what the company hires, and since they are boring, the company makes their matches short, and the divas can't develop their feuds or character, which makes it more boring. It's a vicious circle, and that needs to be stopped right now. Just downright pitiful. Downright pitiful. I mean, it is sad. The popularity of women's wrestling. The popularity of women's wrestling expands all over the world, but the popularity is more evident here in the States. A city called Naperville, Illinois, is the place of interest, where one Kevin Harvey, who is a fan slash producer, says that he's banking on a renewed renewed popularity in women's wrestling will draw fans in his neck of the woods. According to the Chicago Tribune, Kevin Harvey is banking that a renewed popularity in women's professional wrestling will draw fans to Naperville for a card filled with some of the best athletes in their field. The the sport The sport is generating an increased following, said Harvey, who's lived in Aurora and Naperville the last 16 years. There seems to be more options for women. He said, what fans like, he said, is these women can show the athleticism of women's wrestling. That trend is not going unnoticed on the national level. Last week, the industry got a huge boost when media and business moguls announced a new tag team partner effort to bring the women's wrestling or WOW series to a wilder U.S. audience. Mark Burnett, president of MGM Television and Digital Group and WOW co-owners, Jeannie Buss, and Los Angeles Lakers owner and David McLean, the creator of the Netflix hit series Glow, short for Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, agreed to work with Access TV to provide the television production and cable satellite and distribution WOW events. Access TV is a partnership between Dallas Mavericks owner billionaire Mark Cuban, TV and radio personality Ryan Seacrest, and talent agency Creative Artist Agency. I knew Jeannie's passion for elevating women's wrestling for several years, so when Mark Burnett told me what MGM Studios has planned for a while, I decided to get involved. Cuban Access TV's chairman and CEO said in a statement, Access TV's long-term success inside the squared circle and broadcasting New Japan Pro Wrestling makes airing WOW a natural fit. Harvey is looking to capitalize on the women's wrestling revival and fill the stands at the Illinois Basketball Academy on the city's far northwest side with an audience that developed that debuts July 17th, or no, 7th through the 8th. Yeah. Final segment, and then hopefully I could take some of you guys' questions or comments. This is a big one. Women's wrestling equity. Equality, equity to me is an important factor in any sport, including women's pro wrestling. In a 2016 article written by Tribune or Tebu of Premier.com, he talks about the fight for gender equality inside the WWE ring. According to Premier.com, World Wrestling Entertainment isn't exactly known for pushing the boundaries of social progress. Still, last year's WrestleMania event was a jarring example of how far behind the company has fallen when it comes to its portrayal of female wrestlers. The women's champion Nikki Bella emerged from accompanied backstage accompanied by her twin her twin sister Brie and presented herself to the swelling around 67,000 people with her signature entrance dance, a slow motion twirl of her hips, swerving three times to the beat of the lyrics, "You can look, but you can't touch." Commentator Jerry Lawler observed, "I'm glad these two aren't mind readers. I get my face slapped a lot." The Bellas were about to compete in the only women's match on the biggest wrestling show of the year, and not coincidentally, it was also the shortest. There were no titles on the line, few discernible consequences at stake, and the audience reacted with a middling enthusiasm. It could have been instantly forgettable had it not been for a guest appearance by mixed martial arts champion Ronda Rousey later in the evening. Rousey wasn't there to be looked at compared to many of the WWE Diva female wrestlers. She was there to kick someone's ass, or at least pantomime doing so. When she helped Dwayne The Rock Johnson dispatch a pair of villainous authority figures, the crowd lost its mind. In the span of about 7 minutes, a woman who had never before appeared on WWE programming was proved to be a bigger star to the company's audience than just about anyone, make or female, male or female, who appears on its weekly television shows. Pro Wrestling Foremost journalist Dave Meltzer wrote in the Wrestling Observer later that week that Rousey was 20 times more popular than any of the women in the WWE. It's not like there isn't talent there or that the women aren't marketable. It's the presentation that doesn't allow for you to take them seriously. Since this article, they have come a long way, Mr. Meltzer. The women are now main eventing, headlining Raw, SmackDown, plus pay-per-views, etc., etc. It doesn't matter the gender or color. Wrestlers are women's wrestlers are evolving, and there is no end in sight. Well, that's all for this week, and until next time, God bless. So that was me, and that's the video for this week. I think women's wrestling has come a long way since the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and even the 2000s. I think, they're pushing the barriers. I mean, they're fighting for equal rights, equal pay, and everything. And I think they deserve to be the main event, and they are main eventing. And, they're the face of WWE, AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor. the whole et cetera, et cetera. And I'm a believer that they're the future of wrestling, in my opinion. And so they've come a long, long way, and they deserve the credit, the big mainstream credit. If the mainstream would just for 1 minute just stop with the disrespect and just focus on the women for their talent and not their looks. And with that being said, that's going to do it for me this week. Um, I might just take a break this week. I might not be on, but you're fully welcome to watch this video. Don't forget, please comment, like, and subscribe, and let me know what you guys think in the chat. And until next time, guys, God bless.